Namaskar. We welcome you to this Himalayan Heritage Foundation for this interaction today. Madam, are you there, please?
Yes, I am very much there. Thank you.
Please, your video is not visible. Video is off.
Video is off.
Please, we have started.
Video on now.
We can't see you.
Okay, 1 minute. Yeah, something bad.
Please, we are on.
Okay. Shall I change the device?
But you are not visible actually.
Yeah. I was there very on the iPad.
Earlier it was there. Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, I've come on the iPad. But something went wrong with the.
Kindly switch off the other, mute other device, otherwise it will echo. You can.
I think I have.
You mute the other one. Yes, please. So, Namaskar. We welcome you to Himalayan Heritage Foundation. As you know, since Swami Ram Jayanti, we have been organizing a series of discussions, talks, and interactions with eminent people. And it started with the Swami Ram Jayanti, the Paramashavacharya of Trika system. Then we ranged on to various discussions on the northern frontier, the importance of the northern frontier, the strategic importance of the Himalayas, the Sanskrit tradition of Kashmiri Pandits, and its importance in exile, and then the genocide and the denial of genocide of the Kashmiri Pandits. We had eminent speakers ranging from Dr. Sheshekar Toshkhani ji. Then we had Lieutenant General Kakkar. Yesterday there was an eminent psychologist, Dr. Rajat Mitra. And today we are very much delighted, honored, and it's a privilege for us to have a very eminent personality with us. And she's Dr. Chandrakanta Garyali, IAS. She has been the Chief Secretary of Tamil Nadu, Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, Principal Secretary to the Governor of Tamil Nadu. She has many feathers in her cap as a public servant, I must say, and she's very popular. As I was researching on her after reading her book, which has come recently, that is the talk of our discussion today. So basically, she was very popular among the self-help groups in the Chennai women. She's basically called the mother of this innovation. And then her interest in reviving the entrepreneurship, and ultimately her being a major contribution being that she's very conscious spiritually. That is a wonderful thing. I was saying her journey from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, that book, how she thinks of India as a one civilizational entity, not as a bureaucrat, but as a person who recognizes herself in the language of Kashmir Shaivism, that is Pratibhigyan, self-recognition. And it's a wonderful thing that she is a inheritor of that tradition. Her parental basically upbringing, her father was a freedom fighter, and then her mother was a social worker, and she instituted an institution to help the people. And now she is basically keeping up to her genes and being born in Narparistan in the Srinagar city. And after 72, she's a 72 IES officer batch. And now her interest basically, after the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from their homeland Kashmir, their travails, their persecution, their Holocaust, and she has been witness to it, but she has served it, she has internalized this whole pain and visited the settlement camps in Jagati also. She's helping the people in terms of sensitizing them, helping them to sustain the things, how to make the livelihood and this professions happen. So her book, which has come up, has caught the imagination of the people in these times. And this is something wonderful. I have the book, Kashmir, the Land of Kashyapa. The Saga of Kashmiri Pandits. When I went through this book, it was amazing to see the sweep of the book, because in these 10 chapters, I can see these 10 chapters basically giving not only glimpse but a continuity of Kashmiri Pandit tradition and the genocide from the Saga of Kashmiri Pandits, their stories of Srinagar, then coming down to Gotras, surnames, rituals, ritual traditions, and the Shaivism, of course, the trick of philosophy, and then shrines, and of course the atrocities. That is the basically the punch where she comes in. This basically Gagar Misagar Barna. This is that kind of work she has done, I must say, and giving the people, though she has not served here, but like a bird's eye view, and then integrating the whole things in this marathon book. It's a wonderful read, and I must tell you, when I got this book, I finished it in a one go, because I was so curious that somebody is writing for us who has not lived here, but her soul really, really feels for her homeland, Kashmir, the Sanskrit traditions of Kashmiri Pandits. We welcome you, madam, to this talk, this interview. This is not an interview, but a kind of homecoming for us all. We are proud of you. We really salute your this intention to make the people aware of this saga of Kashmiri Pandits. It has been a tale of tribulations, genocide. Now, let us tell us something. What moved you to write this book straight away?
Actually, I have been working in Tamil Nadu, and when all these things were happening, we could not directly do anything. We went and lobbied with governments. We tried to get admissions for children in different universities in Bangalore, in Bombay, in Delhi, and all. We worked on those fronts, but we couldn't really directly do anything for people, and that was always a painful thing for us. And that pain was always there, that we could not do anything. So when at some point I thought, got worried that all our traditions are being diluted, because they were all rooted in Kashmir. They were rooted on that Yarmal. They were rooted on those temples. They were rooted on that Hari Parvat. And I thought, I've seen my grandmother going every day to Hari Parvat, and all the old people were going. Everybody was going. So I got very concerned that we'll lose all that, and we should document it quickly before it is lost, because you see, younger generations will all be brought up outside. When we were young, at least our parents were teaching us, our grandparents were teaching us. But today, people will totally move away from our roots. So I had this only desire to document everything. And when I went for documentation to Jammu, I met Sheila Paul Handu, and she said, "Have you ever been to Jagti?" I said, "No." So when I went there, I realized that whereas we are thinking everybody has been rehabilitated, everybody is happy. I see people in Australia. I live half the time in Australia. I see people are living one pahad pe ek Kashmiri family reh rahi hai Melbourne mein. Aram se very wealthy, very happy, doing very well. As we all feel okay, everything, all is good, all is well. But when I came to Jammu and went actually to these places, Bhutti, Vagara, sab jagah, I said, whole lot of people are still in that condition, and we don't realize it. I hadn't realized that after 30 years also things are bad for certain people. Now I try to find out who are these people. These are the people who are small shopkeepers, the small petty landholders, small farmers, the people whose education got disrupted and they could not go back to proper schools and colleges and could not get proper education, which would have given them proper employment. These are the kind of people who have been left out. And we can't leave them behind. And that is the thing which really disturbed me. And so I started writing about culture, because I wanted to document the culture. I wanted to document our shrines, our customs, our traditions, our society, the type of social stratification we had, the different categories of Brahmins we had, right from Karkun to Gore to Kandur to Vasa to, whatever. But then I got trapped into this. I said, my God, this is there. And not only that, I started working with these people. And I have set up a fund called Vitasta Welfare Fund, which is supported by my family and friends. And we do little things, humanitarian help for very, very needy people in these camps. The requests come to us. Basically, we work with one of the local NGOs called Helpline Humanity. So they're very much in the middle of the place, and they get directly to see and give us tell us what is needed. So we basically work through them. So that is what brought me into atrocity. So I started writing about it. Then I got a writer's block because the whole book got over, but this chapter on atrocities I could not finish. This was so painful that for 3 years I wrote everything in 2017. From 2017 till 2019, I could not finish the last chapter because it was so painful. And I went and asked so many people, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I got stuck here. I don't know what to do, what to say. And finally, I don't know, I got enlightened. I thought I'll ask people. And so I interviewed people, Mr. Chagru of Param Kashmir, and then Sheila ji and some other people. And then uh, my husband told me, finish it at a idea of hope. There should be hope for future. Let it not be a disappointing book. Let us finish it, end it with hope. So then I was able to finish this book where I said that. But I really felt that something has, our country, our nation, our land has been cursed. This land of Kashyapa has come under a curse because not only we suffered, those who were left behind also suffered in their own manner. And it's all human misery, whether it is Hindus or Musalman or jo bhi hai. I mean, we don't have, our culture, our religion doesn't teach us to hate anybody, teach us to harm anybody. We are an inclusive religion. We are an inclusive Saivism. It's a universal religion. So हमारे दिल में तो किसी के लिए कोई बुराई नहीं होती. So we feel that everybody is suffering and the whole land is under curse. And then I ended my book saying that unless those temple bells will ring again, unless Vagasta is worshipped again, unless all those people come and chant, the valleys again vibrated with the valley chanting and Havan and all that, that curse won't lift. This curse will lift only when all those things are restored. This is how I have ended my book. And also, why I called, there was a lot of debate about the naming the book. बहुत सारे नाम आए, लेकिन land of Kashyapa, because I wanted to talk about Hindu heritage of Kashmir. Everybody thinks all over the world, they think Kashmir is a Muslim place. Majority Muslim, उसके साथ ये क्या हो रहा है, वो क्या हो रहा है. So they don't know till 14th century, for 5,000 years till 14th century, it was a Hindu place. Totally Hindu, 100%. उसके बाद ठीक है, Islam came in and then they did all kinds of zor zabardastis and the people converted and all that. So the history of being Islamic is only 600 year old. History of being Hindu is 5,000 year old. And how can we ignore that? And that is why I brought the book to celebrate the Hindu heritage of Kashmir, Hindu, Buddhist. And if you will see, look, I have nothing anti-Muslim about it, but if you see what is the contribution after 14th century in terms of literature, architecture, art, and this and that, what is the contribution we have made, Kashmiris have made to the world? Now, if you see what is the contribution we have made from olden times till 14th century, then you see, there were 26 treaties in Sanskrit, out of which 24 were written in Kashmir. If it was tools of astrology, if it was music, the Sangeet Ratnakar, who based on which entire Carnatic music is based, he went from Kashmir. When the problem started, that family moved from Kashmir to Deccan, and there he has written his Sangeet Ratnakar. He has written his book, Sarandev. Now, all these people have gone from Kashmir. I mean, there have been all kinds of areas in which our scholars have made contributions, which was unique and much more than the rest of India. That we have to celebrate, and we have to realize where we come from. We are the children of those people, and we need to understand that. We need to regain that glory. We need to walk in their footsteps, and that is why I wrote this book, that our younger generation should know, not relate to that we became miserable, we have to leave and we are in camps, but where are we coming from? And relate to that and get back that power. We are very powerful because of our values, because of our hospitality traditions, because of our religion, which is universal and non-discriminatory. So that values will give us a lot of power, and we can still do anything which we like in life. And that is where was the main purpose of writing this book. So the last chapter happened because I went to Jagti and I saw these people, that people started telling their stories. And anyway, then I was able to complete it somehow. And only in 2020, during COVID, I sat down and completed it. I made last visit to Jammu in February, March. Mr. Jalali and all are sitting there. Maybe they're watching this program. Helpline people, we all went. We did lots of work in the camps till March. And then we came back. I returned only on 5th March. And then COVID, this lockdown happened. And then I sat down with the book because I came with some finality, conclusion in my mind that how I can end my last chapter. And after 3 years, I completed it after returning from Jammu in March. So this has been a very painful journey. Even writing has been very painful. Hmm. For example, I have written about a lot of interesting things like our astrological traditions. My parents and our grandparents, they all believed that there's no parallel to astrology in Kashmir. The way they make satuk, they make the predictions, it's unparalleled, and they used to be accurate to the T. Even our own family Guruji, what he used to make, people used to swear by it, and every little thing will come true. If he said somebody will die at 20, that person has to die at 20. Something will, some kid will be born, some marriage, some widowhood, everything will happen. So that kind of knowledge we had. We had these great astrologers living in Vijay Vihar, Bridgeburg Circle. I have gone there with my grandmother. She used to consult Premnath Shastri. So now people like that had to leave that village. That means village was populated by astrologers. There were 10, 15 families in a row. They all had to leave because one man was taken out, killed in public. They all had to leave. So I've met son of Premnath Shastri, Omkar Nath Shastri, and discussed with him our traditions of astrology, which was so great. And he told me something very interesting, which I want to share. He said that it is calculation, but it's not only calculation. There should be divine grace to make the prediction. So those people who are very pure and very learned, only they can make accurate predictions, like his father and one of his ancestors. He himself doesn't claim that he can do that kind of thing. He himself was very humble. He said, though he's in that tradition, but this is something these people used to do so much of tapasya and all that, and then make predictions. That is why they used to be so correct. And they were also divinely inspired. Not only they made calculation, so maths is one part and divine grace is the other part for being a good astrologer. So those kind of people we had. And interestingly, he told me when Vijay Vihara was a university, which was destroyed in 14th century, his family was connected with the Department of Astrology of that university. So see, we have, and these people have horoscopes and panchants made 350 years ago, still in their possession. Though for a time there was a breaking, the people had to run away and all, and they reassembled, regathered their manuscripts. So they still have very, very ancient panchang with them. One of them 350 years. And they were telling me they were making Urdu diaries, Urdu panchang also, but from Islamic thing, till very recently. And then one of the father's friends came from Anantnag and said, some of the people are doing prachar, why a Hindu infidel is preparing the Islamic calendar and they may harm you, you kindly stop making it. So at that time, that Premnath Shastri stopped making Islamic diary. Otherwise, they were making Islamic panchang also because they could do it very well. So,
I was very immersed in this whole thought process. Basically, you traced it in a very graphic manner that how rich our traditions, our aesthetics basically constitutes our place consciousness that has been violated. The aesthetics of a place has been violated for us as a community. And I have always maintained an argument that Jammu and Kashmir is not an integral part of India, but it's the nerve center of the Indian consciousness from where Sanskrit thought has come up and it has created the intellectual or scholarly pool. And because it has been struck in the nervous system, that is Jammu and Kashmir or Kashmir, and whole India got paralyzed in terms of understanding the kind of jihad or understanding the kind of theofascism that basically ruptured the place consciousness of Kashmir. Now, you were going through this kind of pain to visit Jagti and these living camps, basically, we call them camps. And basically these camps, in the local parlance, we don't call them township as being, we call it tawanship. Tawanship is a kind of a satire on it,
Yes,
because
Tawan I know, which played.
yes, exactly. So that kind of things, and this kind of ghettoization, when everything has been violated, what kind of thoughts came to you? It was a kind of death immersion. What you felt exactly in this post-independent India, genocide of a community has taken place in independent India. It was not a partition time. So how do you feel? Subversion of the governance has contributed to the genocide of Kashmiri
You know,
Pandits, and still it has been
I
denied.
research. I tell you, this was, I don't know how it was such a sad thing, because I tell you that time, because my research shows that that time there was a total vacuum in the administration. Your chief minister was sitting in England. Your chief secretary was proceeding on leave. Your governor was yet to come. Jagmohan was still on the way. All that has happened in those couple of days. When the whole people were threatened and they had to leave. This is the day on the day there was no governance, and nobody from Delhi or anything bothered. Neither Prime Minister nor Home Minister was Mufti. He didn't bother. Farooq Abdullah was England. His chief secretary is living in Chennai only. Musa Raza, he's a friend. Then Musa Raza himself told me, because Farooq Abdullah told them, if you put Governor Jagmohan, I will resign. So he resigned. And his chief secretary went on leave. So that day when people were asking for help, there was no one there in administration to help them. There were calls coming to all the people, to Delhi, to this thing, hame maarne aa rahe, hame bachao and all. There was no administration, total breakdown, whether it was how they could have done it. Uh, I mean, this was something, a very huge human lapse and administrative lapse. And that then Chief Minister, Home Minister, Mufti, and I think Prime Minister was Chandrasekhar or somebody, I don't remember now correctly, but it was one of those
VP
Prime
Singh.
Ministers. VP Singh and Mufti Muhammad Singh. And then, so the democratic, whatever governance was there, whatever little interference CM and other could have done, that was also destroyed. The chief secretary had no role to play. He was asked to be a puppet, so he just left. And governor had come only as far as Jammu the day it happened. He had not even reached Kashmir. Of that kind of scenario, total breakdown on administration, nobody to listen to you. You can see how pathetic people would have been.
So this kind of death immersion, now you can see 30 years, more than 30 years have passed, and Indian state has not acknowledged it as a genocide, and still there is denial of this genocide in the modern India, in the post-independent India. So how do you see a community which has 100% literacy rate, which is known for its traditions, which are rich in terms of knowledge? It's a peaceful community. It's the most cultured community, and you never find a Kashmiri Pandit who is indulged in a crime. And that sort of a community has been basically relegated to the background in this whole modern democratic society, and the Indian political class has been in constant denial about their genocide, when the camps, or you can say makeshift camps, and the dispersal is still visible. So what do you think has constituted to this kind of apathy towards this nationalist community, which swear by the Constitution of India, which swear by Indian nationalism? Why this kind of humiliation for a community which has been subjected to genocide in post-independent India?
You see, because our people are also very non-violent, simple. They were only trying to save their skin, and then they are not in the habit of. And see these, because I tell you, the administration itself did it, because VP Singh and Mr. Said, Mufti Muhammad Said, they would not have taken responsibility and admitted that they have done anything wrong. So I think nobody will admit, and I think we also kept quiet. We just wanted to, sit down and save our families, save our women, save our children, put them in schools, do things like that. Because I also know some people even came to Madras, and I went with them to see Swamiji Shankaracharya. He called us there. And Mr. Mattu of Bangalore, he was also there. It is there in my book. I have mentioned that incident. And then Swamiji and all these people who had few families had reached Madras. Then later they moved to Bangalore. So Swamiji consoled us, and there was so much of crying going on. I cried, everybody was crying. And then himself, Kanchi Shakracharya, he was consoling us. And it was very, very, so people were still trying to just save themselves. They didn't even think that they have a political voice to say anything. It was Mattu who created some political dialogue in Bangalore. So the Chief Minister of Bangalore, Krishna, he tried to help. Mattu tells me that people came and people working in telephone department, they came at that time, reached Bangalore, they were transferred to Bangalore, and Bangalore people refused to give them posting because they said हमारी promotion रुक जाएगी, हमारे job save हो जाएंगे. They refused to give them accommodation. Accommodation was available for telephone department. So then he went to newspapers and this and that, met the chairman. Then they were given servants' quarters, even though they were officers. जो सर्वेंट क्वार्टर अवेलेबल थे वो उनको रहने के लिए दिए गए. And Mattu says even that they accepted because they were in Dharamshala near railway station. Hundreds of families who were actually proper employees of telephone department transferred from Srinagar to. So these are educated people having proper jobs, getting good salaries. उनकी ये हालत थी. अब बताइए जो मामूली लोग हैं जो गांव में बेचारा दुकान चला रहा है या 2 एकड़ 3 एकड़ लैंड है या छोटा सा कुछ है, वो क्या करेगा? So people were just trying to survive outside. My my relative, this Sheila Paul Hattu, आप जानते होंगे अभी वो शायद रेलवे बोर्ड के मेंबर है, अनंतनाग की कॉन्फ्रेंस. She was a teacher and she is going home from school and these her own students are walking behind her and saying Baga Maron is a master by. Now she came and told her husband. Same time he put his father and 2 of their children in a bus to Jammu. They're one of the first to leave. Oh, पहले वो वहाँ शिव मंदिर में पहुँच गए थे. अमरनाथ जी थे, उन्होंने उनको वहाँ रखा था. तो उस टाइम 5-6 families आई थी बस. She's one of the first families to arrive in Jammu. And she was telling me that husband stayed back because they had a furniture making factory in Anantnag. So then after a few days, his own employee who used to work with him, carrying a gun under his ferran, came to kill him. That is the stage when he left. And after that, they burned the workshop, they burned the houses. So this is the type of thing which our own family members who have gone through this, which were slightly better off. This is their condition. And she says, when we came to Jammu for so many years, we didn't have money to buy medicine for children. We didn't buy new clothes. She used to tell me, Didi, kapde bejo apne. We used to send. So this was and these are well-off people. I mean, father-in-law was a Tahsildar retired, which was a big thing in those days in Kashmir. Told Anantnag and everybody Pahalgam का Tahsildar. But फिर इन लोगों की ये हालत हुई. But मतलब मामूली लोगों की क्या हालत होगी आपने सोचे? तो लोग जो है अपने को बचाने में, अपनी इज्जत बचाने में, अपने बच्चों को पढ़ाने में यही हो जाए तो उसमें लगे, तो उन्होंने कुछ आवाज भी नहीं उठाई. I am very happy, whatever has happened after 30 years, everybody is talking. It has so happened. You see, when I went in 2017, hardly it was dead. There hardly एक ये helpline humanity कोई जैसे sleepy way में कुछ कर रहे हैं. But now if you see, there is so much of awareness. There is KP volunteers. There's this, there's that. There are cultural sites. There are people telling Ikwat. There is Kashmir as it is. There are hundreds of enthusiastic things happening. There's literature happening. There are books happening. I have seen so many books in the. So I think whatever has to happen happens in life. But today our people have so much awakened. I think they are going to change the situation. ऐसा मुझे लग रहा है. Really very hopeful. And I think government is also a little proactive, no?
Exactly.
That makes
No,
all the difference. Political will makes difference. That gives some strength to people. So I think all those things are happening. There's a lot more things happening. I see everybody wants to do something. And if that is the situation, things can be changed. Because it's not in me, you want to change things. There are people with you, all the people who are listening, they want to change things. The people in Jammu, at least today I will say there are at least 50 to 100 organizations of KPs who want to do things, who are doing in their own small way or big way. And that's something, a big, big change. That's like a movement is happening.
exactly.
Today morning I
You
was
have made a very yes, yes, please,
Today
please.
morning, I was talking to our, I had a Zoom call with Australia, and there is one business, one organization has set up by KPs for promoting entrepreneurship and business and all that. Mr. Bakshi is there, Mr. Ashton is there. Today, they were all talking to me and telling me about it. So, see, there are so many different forums happening. They want to develop skills, soft skills, and entrepreneurship for our youth. So all this is happening. I think things are looking very good. Even if it is देर आए दुरुस्त आए हो रहा है क्योंकि हमारे लोगों को भी डिप्रेशन से निकलने में बहुत टाइम लग गया लोग डिप्रेशन में पड़े हुए थे they were dying they were depressed they didn't have energy to even get up and stand but younger generation is more enthusiastic they have stood on their feet they want to do something they want to look back to their roots so I think right now situation is good.
Yes, you have painted a very clear picture about that. Basically, what has happened, this continuous persecution, this has been a transgenerational genocide which has suppressed our genes, and ultimately we are trying to come out of it.
Yes,
And
that's correct.
fortunately, that as you rightly said, the younger generation has taken the cudgels to be articulate because they have the wherewithal of the social media, new technical gadgets. At 1990, we were small children. I was a fourth standard student, and I remember we never had the access to such things. Media was gagged. It was termed as law and order problem, and the whole of the democratic whole India remained silent. And law and order problem, it was denied as law and order problem. And today it's facing the whole India as a problem, which is taking the form of genocide in West Bengal, or you can say New Delhi, what we are seeing. So now, after this whole things, what you suggest in order to sustain in exile is a challenge. And community has developed a self-sufficient ecosystem, as you rightly said, to deal with the day-to-day challenges in terms of different organizations. Everyone is contributing. These different voices are basically voices of unison because for hundreds of years our voice was suppressed and people are learned to articulate. That is the issue. So how do you see what are the survival challenges? You have been a bureaucrat, you have been a public servant, you have been yourself busy in tsunami related work. You did a commendable job in rehabilitating people, and you know how it is being uprooted. And what you suggest in terms of this survival in exile, what is a model a policymaker should adopt till we go back to our homeland? What is the survival model the policymaker should adopt in Kashmiri Pandits?
See, that was my only concern when I started writing the book, that survival of our culture. So that is only we have to do it. We have to inculcate some. You see, now, no doubt, people are marrying outside. Even my marriage took place outside. My husband is a South Indian Saraswat. They said they also came out of Kashmir during the 14th century. And they're also called Bhatt. And their ancestors came, but nonetheless, they're South Indian. So many people will marry outside. My this thing is that this ununity love. So that kind of thing, people marrying outside and intermingling, that is it's going to happen. Not only here, it's happening across India. Now, because our native place itself is gone, our culture is more in danger. The Bengalis come out to marry outside, so okay, Bengal is still there. Tamil Nadu is still there. Still, the Tamil culture will remain. So we are in danger of because our land, it's all in a mess, in a melting pot. So now the responsibility is much more on us, our generation, who still thinks that how to cultivate those values, how to keep our language alive, how to keep our folklore alive, how to keep our festivals alive. So we have to look at what I was told that Premnath Shastri, when he came to Jammu, he prepared cassettes for all our rituals. What happened one day? One lady from America called him and said, "My husband has died. He's lying dead. I don't know what to do, sir. Tell me what to do." And then he, point by point, told her what to do. Then he realized there will be so many people like this because Navera Panditjis and all that. So he decided to prepare the cassettes on various rituals, and those are available now. So that was one of his major contributions, that including death rites he included. And when he included death rites in Panchang, there was a lot of hue and cry from the Brahmins of Delhi saying, "ये आपने जो हमारी जो शुभ पुस्तक है ये पंचांग, उसमें आपने ये डेथ राइट्स कैसे जोड़ दी?" तो उसने कहा जरूरी है, ये भी होना चाहिए उनको. तो काफी क्रिटिसिज्म हुआ, लेकिन फाइनली पीपल अप्रिशिएट दैट if they want they can refer to the book and do what they have to do. So the thing is, since our culture, we should not, we always have this air of superiority that Kashmiri culture is great and all that. Probably it is so. So this great culture, which is has such a great values of hospitality, such a great value. अभी हम लोग कभी छुआछूत नहीं करते, हम लोग कभी बड़ा छोटा नहीं देखते, हम लोग किसी के साथ दुर्व्यवहार नहीं करते, हम लोग सबको पास में बिठाते हैं. तो we are very inclusive because of this Kashmir Shaivism, also because of the impact of Buddhism. We have a different way of life. Kashmiri Pandit way of life is different from an ordinary Hindu. Now that being the case, we can, when we marry another family, rather we teach it to those people with whom we marry, the way we raise our families, even if we marry outside, which happens now, which is happening every day and cannot be stopped. All over the world it's happening. We cannot, it's what my parents telling me every day, देखो बेटा शादी तो तुम कश्मीरी से ही करना, तो बाद में हो गई बाहर. तो कितना भी हम सच्चे कहते हैं बच्चों को, बाद में वही होता है जो होना होता है. Marriages are made in heaven. And today's in this way, children are going all over the world to study and all that. How can that be controlled? So thing is, we keep our values and we teach it to others also. We can be the torch bearers for other people. Now Swamiji was like my father. This picture is behind. He was my spiritual father. And I, to my surprise, when I was a visiting fellow in Oxford, I met a neighbor. My neighbor was professor of Sanskrit, and उसका एक स्टूडेंट था अंग्रेज. तो बोले आज मेरे साथ खाना खाओ, मेरा स्टूडेंट आया. तो मैं स्टूडेंट के साथ खाना खाया तो पूछे क्या कर रहे हो? मैं संस्कृत पढ़ रहा. क्या पढ़ रहे हो? कश्मीर से पढ़ रहा. मैंने कहा ऑक्सफोर्ड में कश्मीर से कौन पढ़ा रहा है? प्रोफेसर सैंडरसन पढ़ा रहा है. अरे भाई वो कौन है? उन्होंने किससे सीखा? स्वामी लक्ष्मण जी से सीखा. अब बताओ, हमारे स्वामी जी का विद्यार्थी जो है, he is Don of All Souls College in Oxford. Then immediately he arranged a appointment with Professor Sanderson. I went to meet him. He was so delighted to see me. And उसकी टेबल पे स्वामी जी का फोटो था. बोले मैंने 10 साल पढ़ा स्वामी जी के साथ. मुझे अपनी वाइफ भी वहीं मिली कश्मीर में, शादी भी वहीं मिली. So then he told me he's starting a course on Kashmir Shaivism next week. So would you like to join? I said yes, I join. So he was conducting 3 months के लिए weekly once 4 घंटे की class. So I attended that. That was the first formal training I had in Kashmir Shaivism and then the first day I went to the class, he introduced me to the whole class. There were 24 people from different parts of the world. Japan, America, UK, France, Germany, Korea, all kinds of people. It was so delightful. It was not Indian. There's not one Indian also. I was, because he invited me, I was there. All over the world, people are learning Kashmir Shaivism. What a delightful thing to see. And then he introduced me. He said, today we have got a special person in our class. This is so-and-so from Kashmir. And for thousands of years, this Kashmir Shaivism, which I'm teaching you, was their way of life. How proud I felt at that moment. And we have forgotten that this is our way of life. And we can adopt it, we can try to understand it, internalize it, and teach others. We can make the world a better place just by our companionship, by our imparting our knowledge to others.
Please. Yes, yes, please.
So,
Yes, so I can get that. You rightly pointed out that Kashmir Shaivism, the Trika system, has given us a very different worldview that is beyond class, beyond caste, progressive throughout, and it's because of this consciousness we have been able to sustain the severe shocks for several centuries, and still we are thriving, we are resurgent, rightly said. But what what has been, why the Indian state, the Indian political class, you have been part of the governance, why has been there a so much of delay, I must say, a kind of ostrich syndrome to
and
deny this genocide?
this is totally bureaucratic, because the government, if they had given little publicity also, there would have been riots across India. There would have been killing of so many Muslims across India. So you take an easy way out. Now you don't say, you don't tell people. That would have been immediately happened. You think the people would have kept quiet? The Shiv Senas and all those Senas, Bajrang Dals and all that would have, killed so many more, but the lakhs of people. So, well, this is an administratively convenient decision to not to publicize, not to say anything, just to say कैंप पे रख दो, खाना खिला दो, ये दे दो, all that. And you know, वो भी ठीक से पैसा खर्च होता नहीं है. So people
So
must
now,
fight for their rights.
exactly. So truth telling is important in genocide. Memory of this genocide is important. And now we are in a phase, as you rightly said, we are sustaining. We are trying to come to terms with it and fight it in our own way. We have fought. We are still fighting. We are still in exile. It's almost a third generation in exile. So, how do you see that the Kashmiri Pandits one day, what model will be followed to make them return? What ultimately, Kashmir is their homeland and they have to retrieve it, because without place consciousness,
See,
the system cannot thrive. It has to be restored. Restoration of
will
Kashmiri
not
Pandits
die.
in
You
Kashmir
know,
is the re-Sanskritization of Kashmir. And how do you think that the non-refoulement is guaranteed to Kashmiri Pandits so they are restored in their homeland? How do you see it?
the thing is, there are two things. One is the people who are now in bad way, the small group which are in camps, we should pull them out. That is one responsibility we have. We should pull them out and make them stand on their own and have a, just leave that ghetto once for all. That's one responsibility. Second thing is this political thing. Now, until and unless those people who are there, they change their mindset, they also become inclusive, they also become tolerant, they also become the only see basically this defect in the theory of Islam, that is the only other good religion. Everything, everybody else is an infidel. They are idol worshippers, they are this and that, and it is one of their tenets to destroy such people. Now until that mindset is changed, which is rather very difficult thing, and being fanned all the time, even though the basic Kashmiri Muslim thinking was not like that traditionally, because they all came out of this conversions and all that. But because of this, mullaization and infiltration from Pakistan and mullahs from all over the world coming and preaching and spoiled their mind not only for 1 year, now for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. It's going on from 1931. This kind of indoctrination of local Muslim people to become radical Islamists from Sufi Islamists is going on from 1931. Now, to change that mindset is not very easy. Now, government of India is trying, but I think it's going to be very difficult to, and unless those people change their mindset and become inclusive also, either they should have akal to understand that this is in our interest, because they will also suffer. They keep fighting, the उनके ऊपर भी restrictions रहेंगी, उनके ऊपर भी कुछ ना कुछ problems रहेंगे. लेकिन अगर उनको अकल नहीं आती है, and which I think because of the Pakistani interference, because of all this infiltration, because of all this homegrown and foreign-born terrorism, when they will change their mindset to be more inclusive, lay down the arms, it's not very difficult to say. I will rather concentrate on taking out our people out of the misery and making them more independent and more strong.
So you have already ended in a positive note in the book also. You have discussed at length the various facets of Kashmiri Pandits. You have dealt on many issues, from rites, rituals to the good times, bad times, and ultimately the happy ending. But over the years, now you have written a book which is based on your ground zero documentation. Also, you have met the people in camps, and you have seen for yourself what are the burning challenges in the day-to-day life. Because going home, going to homeland, reclaiming our homeland may be a long drawn battle. It's on and on. People have not given up. So, how do you see that? What direction should you take? Because I would like to ask you a question which is very
I will say
practical.
that what direction government has taken some direction, though it came very late. This article should have been removed long ago. So present political direction, more or less, they have taken some stand. They are trying to keep to that. They are not buckling down. They didn't buckle down to international pressure, whatever. So far, so good. And they have to first keep on to that. They should not, political will should be sustained. They should, we'll have to work with Pakistan also. And we have to work with countries like America and Saudi Arabia and also to curbing the terrorism in general. Because this is the funding is coming now. Government of India has done another thing. All the foreign funding has to be routed through one particular bank branch of State Bank of India and Parliament Street. With that, I think a lot of curve will come on foreign funding, which is funding the terrorism. This is another thing which present government is doing. Because I am running an NGO, I get some foreign funding. I have to also open an account. But I'm sure the moment all these accounts come there, the big brother will be watching, and many of these fundings will be totally stopped. And many of them won't even apply now to the new bank, and if they don't, they finish. So one very, very major thing which is happening to curb terrorism in India by stopping this foreign funding, which is mainly done by them. Second will be to put pressure through international pressure through America and other countries which are friendly with Pakistan to relent and get back. Those are the things which can be done. Third is with our people trying to understand, our younger generation of Kashmir trying to understand what is in their interest to be in a country like Pakistan or be with India. And the more they will try to understand that, become more inclusive, I think then things can, that's the only way. It may take long time, but what government is right now doing is much more than what which has happened before.
Exactly. Now, people, the youth in the community, because everywhere we are in exile. Basically, the worst thing is that we are internally displaced people. We are not migrants, as we are being told. We are refugees in our own country, within the boundaries of our own country, and as such, we are basically amenable to IDP guidelines. But in such a condition, how do you see the future of the community youth, their problems? Because exile creates many sort of psychological issues. What you have witnessed, you have been a bureaucrat, but I would like to
We
ask you one
have,
question.
I will tell you still, there's a lot of psychological problems. A lot of psychological problems are there. Can you see me?
Yes, sure. Yes.
So, in fact, even camp like Jagti and all, I written to government also, we need to have psychological services, should have been there in the beginning also. Even now, people are suffering. So, we need to give them a lot of psychological support. We need a psychiatrist there. We need psychological clinics and all that. We need counseling services. People are still very much depressed, and depression has not left. And many people died because of depression, because of heat and all that. We all know that. So we need to give them a lot of support. People are still very depressed. And I strongly recommend that we work. So I think, basically we now help the people who are left behind. I will tell you, sir, I'm very depressed also, because once I talked to some people who are from our own community, and I said, there's so much of problem in this camps. Still people are in a very bad way. You know what they told me? They said, don't bother about that. So just thought, can you call people thought? You talk about calling people garbage, our own people, just because they got left behind, and we work little more hard, and so this is also the attitude. So our attitude has to change. But I think I see the change, and now like Parsi community, when anybody was poor, they left. They helped them. They helped the widows. They helped the poor. They educated the children. Today, hardly there will be anybody. That's why now all the Parsi funds of Tatas and others, which were originally for Parsi people, is now going for all over India. It's for everybody. So like that, I feel that every Kashmiri Pandit has to pull out these people, like the Parsis have pulled out the poor, and bring them up. So first of all, let us bring them up. Let's forget about Kashmir. Many people have been leaving Kashmir from 14th century onwards and doing well even outside. So, I mean, you think the people who are in America and Melbourne and all that are going to come back and all that. Doesn't matter whether they come or not. My husband's ancestors who came in 14th century, Mangalorean Brahmins, Saraswats, so the question is now, how do these people gain their self-respect and dignity and live well, have good jobs, have good opportunities? That is what we have to ensure. Then question of going back and fighting, that will be a separate matter.
Right.
Continuous
Now,
matter.
you have raised a very fundamental, now a very informal or a very personal kind of a question. You have served with distinction. You have served with elan, with lot of
Okay.
contributions to your credit. But have you ever been you have felt some that you should have served here in Jammu and Kashmir and tried
Yes,
to
yes,
this
I did,
work for the people?
and I did, and I came there and I met my uncle, who used to be the finance secretary. He was very famous finance secretary. 17 budgets he has presented 17 times. Nobody could be posted finance secretary. And he was Janaki Nath. तो उसको जान बजट कहते थे क्योंकि 17 बार उन्हें तो मैं उनके पास आई मैंने कहा कि you could go to your hometown on compassionate ground or something you give a short posting for few years. So I told him, uncle, I want a posting here. I want to serve. I really feel like I'll leave my husband also for few years in Madras, but he said nothing doing. You don't know because you see they were in administration. They know where the things were going from bad to worse. He said, no way you are coming here. I am not recommending your case. I am not introducing you to chief secretary. I am not letting you put your application. So I did try and I was totally not allowed by my own uncle who was very powerful, who was actually founder of JK Bank. That man was the first chairman of JK Bank and all this. The contribution is great in the sector of finance. Today people will forget him. But he did not allow. I have come all the way from Madras to Kashmir with my application to be given for carded transfer. They 3-4 years is allowed, even 5 years. So on compassionate ground or some grounds of. So I was not allowed. At least I wanted to serve for a period and do work with community and people, and I didn't get a chance. That's why I want to serve now.
Now, you are working for the welfare of the people in a very different avatar and a very holistic avatar, I must say. You are acting, you have written as a historian, as a psychologist, as a person who was part of this public delivery system. And we hope that this book, which is basically, I must say, a kind of a window into what happened to Kashmiri Pandits, we are all looking forward that after Mahashivratri, that after 10th or 11th, we'll see a book release in Jammu, where basically the most of the Kashmiri Pandit camps like Jagti, Purkhu, ERT, Nagrota are located. So that this is the story of the people who are in wilderness, who are suffering from genocide. And this is a story that must be told to whole, not only whole India, whole entire world, that homelessness is the greatest curse. Homelessness is the greatest disease that is inflicted on a community, that to a literate community like us. But we have been the upholders of Sanskrit Indian tradition. We'll continue to do so because we are the seeds and anchors of the Sanskrit India. Thank you very much for this freewheeling and such a wonderful discussion from straight from your heart. We are highly indebted to you. So much, so much of regards and namaskar.
Thank you to everybody who is listening. Thank you to Mahesh Kolji.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.